All right, so it looks like we are live. What's up, Action Tribe? AJ here, host and founder of My Seven Chakras, my7chakras.com, the show where we help you calm your mind, relax your nervous system, and align with your life's purpose. In today's episode, we're going to talk about some amazing topics, including tapping, the power of affirmations, how to reduce stress in minutes, and why you might be just one step away from transforming your entire life. So make sure that you listen till the very end. And if you'd like to explore more of these topics in your car or if you're at home, then make sure that you hit the subscribe button right now because it does something to the algorithm. I don't know what it does, but it does it so that people who would not usually see our podcast will come across it. Again, before you proceed with this exciting episode, make sure that you hit subscribe, especially if you're on your iPhone. With that being said, let's bring on our special guest for today, Nick Ortner. Nick is the CEO of the Tapping Solution LLC, a company with a mission to bring into the mainstream a simple, effective, and natural healing method known as emotional freedom techniques, EFT or tapping. Tapping is a healing modality that combines ancient Chinese acupressure and modern psychology. Nick has also written many best selling books, including The Tapping Solution and most recently, Manifesting Your Greatest Self. Nick's goal is to empower people to create healthy, abundant, and stress free lives through his books, films, CDs, online events, and speaking engagements attended by participants from all over the world. And this episode is so important and very timely because as we speak, we collectively are going through a global pandemic. People are wearing masks, the economy is experiencing many changes, and people are going through many emotions and anxiety and stress, maybe some depression as well. And this episode will introduce you to a revolutionary method, a technique to reduce stress just through tapping and the power of using the right words. So, Nick, welcome to our show. Are you ready to inspire?
Oh, AJ, thank you so much for having me. Let's go.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, I'm super excited to really start with your story and also the work that you've done and the people that you've met and the people's whose lives you've changed. But first, maybe we could start with some inspiration. What is that one inspirational quote that you have on your mind right now, and how do you apply it in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. When you prepped me with this question, I was thinking about it. I said, well, I gotta come up with something good, right? And something unique, something creative. And I have some that I like, but then I went back to it and I said, you know what? This everyone says this quote, and it's not unique and it's not creative. It's attributed to Gandhi, but I've read some things that maybe he didn't say it first, and it's just be the change you wish to see in the world. We've all heard it, right? But I think it's more important today than ever. What we're dealing with right now, this global pandemic, is obviously very stressful. And why is it stressful? Because stress has two components. No matter what we look at in our lives, when we're stressed, there's two main components. We have uncertainty and lack of control. So any place in our lives, relationships, finances, our body, where we have uncertainty and lack of control, that's going to produce stress in our body. It makes sense if we think about it. Uncertainty. I don't know what's next. I don't know what's coming. I don't know, what is coming my way. Lack of control. I don't know what to do about it. Right. So if we feel bad about our weight in our body and we don't know what to do about it, that can be stressful. If we feel bad about it and we say, oh, but you know what? I have a plan now. I've got the next exercise regimen or I found the right diet for me. Now the stress goes down because we're in control. When we think about a global pandemic, have we ever faced this much uncertainty in our lives? Right?
No.
We have no idea. We have no idea what's next. Like
All right.
we all thought this was going to be over months ago. We're going to have a nice summer and then settle by the fall. Not happening. Have we ever faced this much lack of control where we go, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do to make this situation better. Right. There's even controversy about masks or no masks and this or that and the other. So even the places where potentially we could find some control. Okay, if I do my part, then I can find control. There's so much debate and discussion about it that we don't know, right? That is why that brought me back to be the change you wish to see in the world. It's a little opportunity to go, okay, what can I control in my life? I can't control the global pandemic. I can't control the debate about masks. I can't control the politics. I can control how I feel in this moment. I can control how I respond to something on Facebook. I can bring more love to the situation. I can bring more peace to the situation. I can raise my vibration, my internal experience in order to affect others. So be the change. It's simple. We all know it, but I think it's more important than ever.
Wow, I love this quote. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. It's very apt right now because, like you've mentioned, there's so much change happening. The economy is shifting. For the Americans, there's an election coming up, and there's so much debate about mask, no mask, this and that. And I can see people on Facebook, people who were friends for so many years, are literally fighting, arguing, and stuff like that. And it's such a time when you cannot control a lot of stuff that's happening around you. Be the change that you'd like to see in the world because you, my friend, can make a difference. Thanks a lot for
100%.
sharing that, Nick. I think it's a
100%. And
beautiful.
it takes each of us to respond differently on Facebook, even if we disagree with what someone else is saying, to open up our minds, to be compassionate, to be understanding of some other person's viewpoint, whether you think they're
Exactly.
100% wrong. We're just escalating the conversation so high. And
Right.
the challenge with, what's great about Facebook and social media is that we get to have this experience. Some people are watching us on Facebook now. We get to
Exactly.
connect. That's incredible. The downside is that the discourse is very different. It's much easier to type a response to someone than to say it face to face. If you and I were discussing
It's very true.
politics right now, and we were like, we could have a nice discussion and we could say, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? Now, if we have the same discussion when it's typed out, when there isn't the emotional connection, even of the seeing each other face to face or hearing each other's tone of voice, it
Yeah.
escalates so quickly. And frankly, that's just getting out of control.
That's very, very true. And the best friends of mine that I have are ones that I can have a debate or a discussion with, even though they don't agree with my viewpoint.
Yeah.
We come out of that debate, you know, more informed and with a broader, wider perspective. And that's beautiful. You can agree to disagree. But like you've suggested on Facebook, it becomes anonymous and you're not held accountable for what you're sharing, and people can be rude. Um, I was hoping to start this interview from the very beginning. So, Nick, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
So I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Really?
I My whole family's from there. Still have a lot of family there right now who are we're locked. We're somewhat locked down in the U.S. They're really locked down there, so they're really suffering. I moved to the United States when I was almost 8 years old, so I turned 8 a couple months after I moved here, and spoke very broken English at the time from first and second grade English classes in Argentina, but I was young enough to pick it up really quickly and not have an accent, except for my wife who says I pronounce a couple words funny. So it's still there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, so I grew up, and then we moved to Brookfield, Connecticut, where I now live in the town over in Newtown, Connecticut. So been in this area for now I'm 42, so 35, 34 years. Some stints in New York, some stints in California. But yeah, most of my childhood, early childhood in Argentina, and then schooling, second grade onwards in Connecticut.
Wonderful. So, as a child, what did young Nick want to become when he grew up?
That's such a good question. I heard a lot things like you'd be a good lawyer.
Okay.
So that's probably me arguing with my mom about things and having, reasoned debates and discussions, which is coming back to bite me with my 5-year-old daughter, where I see that same trait happening where
Okay.
I was like, that's a pretty good argument you're putting together for, I said no to something, but you just made a good argument. And so always, into that side of things in terms of language and discourse. Never dreamed I would teach tapping. I didn't know what tapping was then.
Sure.
Never dreamed of writing books, so I read a lot of books. So I was always intellectually very curious growing up, and yeah, so probably in the lawyer world, language has always been important to me, and I've always done well with language, which serves me now in the work I do to have that deep understanding of the power of language.
That's so interesting. And as you've sort of alluded to, parents play a huge role, right? In especially during our formative years, first 7 years, first 8 years, in how our brain is forming, how our outlook
Yeah.
is shaping up. So, what influence did your parents play, especially in the earlier years for you?
Well, what's people. So I work with my brother and sister in the
Yeah,
business, and my mom and dad now work in the business as well. My dad's been working for a long time. My mom's been working in the foundation the last couple of years. So it's a family business, and my parents are really proud and of the
nice.
work we've done. And people often ask them, what did you do to raise these three great kids and who are doing good work in the world? And
Yeah,
if I look at what they did, I mean, they were hardworking parents, and my mom was a school psychologist, and it was a tough job, and she was going to work every day. My dad was an aeronautical engineer, then working with airplane parts and sales, and then did his own entrepreneurial thing. So definitely got the entrepreneurial streak from my dad. He was into that stuff, and they were into personal development, which
right.
I can remember. A lot of your younger listeners won't remember the Nightingale Conant. They
Hmm.
still exist, but these
Yeah,
tape sets. So I can see so clearly they're about this big, and you open it up, and there's 8 or 10 tapes. They're all like in the plastic binder things.
yeah.
And my dad would order those all the time, anything from sales to persuasion to personal development, and I would listen as well.
Mm,
Also, Tony Robbins.
yeah,
My mom bought his personal power tape set. Watching TV. She's always been a good TV shopper, and she ordered it.
yeah.
And I remember it so clearly sitting on the shelves, and I started listening in high school to it. So I started feeding my brain with that info. Story we can get to later is that I've become friends with Tony since then. I was actually at his house a couple weeks ago,
Mm,
and we text, which is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me, alongside with Wayne and Louise, like that I know we're going to talk about. But there was definitely that influence of personal development being around the house, and I think that speaks to what we can do as parents.
mm,
That they never pushed me in one direction. They never said, listen to this tape set. They never said, you've got to do this or do that. If I made choices, if I wanted to quit the soccer team because I didn't like the coach and I wasn't happy, they just supported me along the way with
mm.
my decisions, and then had this other information around that served me. So I
Mm.
think that was a big part of that influence, just those Nightingale Conant tape sets, the Tony Robbins tape sets that started getting my brain working
Right.
in that way.
That's so interesting because I had this question before jumping into the interview because you do so many things, right? You're jumping on interviews, you've written so many books, live in person events, workshops, and you're doing a bunch of things. You're teaching people, but you're also teaching people how to use the mind, so psychology. And then there's the entrepreneurial side of things as well, because you run this very successful app, which we're going to get into later on. And so now I know that the entrepreneurship side comes from your dad, the psychology, the teaching from your mom.
Yeah.
And the most importantly, they didn't tell you what to do. They didn't say,
Yes.
become a lawyer, become a doctor. They sort of acted as a conduit for you to be evolve into the adult that you became and the leader that you are right now. So
I
thanks a
love
lot for
that. I
sharing.
don't know if I've ever taken the time to think through that. My mom, the psychology side, my dad, the entrepreneur side, but you nailed it. You're diagnosing my childhood, and it's all making sense now. Thank you.
Beautiful. So take us back to the time when you were a real estate agent in Bethel, Connecticut. What
Yeah.
was happening in your life at that point? Take us back to that moment.
Yeah, so I actually wasn't an agent. I was buying, fixing up, and selling properties. So
Okay.
more on the entrepreneurial side.
Okay.
Was doing it with my dad and brother. You fall into things. So again, my dad being an entrepreneur, he had bought his first house on the side, and to fix up, and did well on it. And then we said, oh, this is something that we might be able to do. It seems profitable, and you set your own hours, and you can drive things. So, we'd go to seminars, and we'd learn things, and we'd go
Right.
back and we'd implement it. So the three of us started working together in there. And we did that for a couple of years. It's to put some dates on it. It's around 2007
Mm.
when I've been doing this for a couple of years, and it wasn't fulfilling. I mean, it was, I always had a sense of doing something bigger in the world, or at
Right.
least being positive and helping people. And it's a really tough job. So if you want to be a really good real estate investor, you can't be that compassionate about the people that you have to evict from
Mm.
the house that haven't paid rent in 6 months. Because if you're that compassionate, your business falls apart because you're not paying the rent, right?
Yeah.
So really difficult decisions to make. And I mean, I'm not saying that evicting was right or not right, but I just didn't enjoy the process of having to make a decision that says, okay, I either have to tell these people to leave their house because they haven't paid, and then I cannot pay the mortgage that I owe. So then I'm going to have to leave my house if, if I don't make these decisions. It's not fun. It's not a fun experience. So around 2007, we've been doing it for a couple of years, fairly successful, up and downs. Some projects were also really difficult and, just hard to get focused as to what I needed to do to build a bigger business and a better business. And I just had this inspiration. I've been doing tapping for a couple of years. I actually first saw it in 2003. Tony Robbins did a demonstration on stage at a seminar that I was at. Really quick. He had been into it for a while. He handed out these little sheets. He said, here are the tapping points. It's good for stress relief. We all had an experience, and that just planted the seed in my mind. So 2003 to 2007, I spent those years just using tapping, just trying it with friends and family. The running joke at the time was, don't say anything is wrong around Nick because he's going to make you tap on it. It was just like, I was just so excited about the technique, about the results that people are getting. And again, just reading books on the side is my own personal enjoyment of it and to add to my life. 2007, right around the time that The Secret had come out and been this huge hit, right? So within the personal development community, the idea of movies, of documentaries, of DVDs was really front and center. And my naive brain said, well, I'll just make a documentary about EFT, which works so well and it's so effective and so clear cut, and it'll be like The Secret. It'll sell millions worldwide, and we'll be on Oprah, and the rest is history. So didn't quite work out that way, but it's worked out pretty well, otherwise. The winter of 2007, I am out in Arizona. I'm actually at the Tree of Life Center doing a cleanse. I'm doing a 7-day green juice fast, and fasts are becoming a big deal now. So this is 2007. Like, finally the science is catching up to how powerful it is. Again, to credit Tony Robbins, and I mean to keep name dropping him, but it was his life mastery program in 2002 where I did my first fast, and it was like, oh my gosh, I feel incredible. Like, my brain is turning back on. My skin looks better. My energy is better. So 2007, I'm doing this fast, and about day 4 or 5, if you fasted before, the first couple of days can be rough. And then when you break through a certain plateau, all of a sudden it's like, you feel better than you ever have before, frankly. And I'm walking, through the desert in Arizona, and I just get this inspiration to make a documentary about tapping. Now, no filmmaking experience, still running the real estate business, not a lot of cash in the bank, just this energy, this inspiration to make this. And I remember being on the phone, calling some of my friends, Nick Palizzi, who now runs The Sacred Science, which is a huge brand, brought him on board to film the movie with me, my sister Jessica, and it was really the three of us that set out to make this documentary film. No credit cards, like I said, well, credit cards and credit lines. We bought $40,000 worth of camera equipment. I could see it so clearly. I don't have an amazing memory. Some people have memories. They remember everything.
Photograph.
But I've got crystal clear memories of those points in my life, right? So I can see us in my little apartment in Bethel, Connecticut, as you mentioned. We've got all this equipment. We're opening it up and we're unpacking boxes, and we're saying, this looks like a light. I mean, is this a light? This is how little we knew. I think we go like this. And we looked up YouTube videos. God bless Nick Palizzi, who figured out how to film things. God bless my sister Jessica, who knocked on door after door after door to get interviews. We didn't know anyone in the space, but we got interviews with Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor and Joe Vitale and Cheryl Richardson and Joe Mercola, like all these amazing experts who were using tapping in their lives. And we spent the next year making the film. Day after day, flying all over the country. Now you can film on a phone and get pretty good footage. Like, this is heavy cameras, big equipment, lugging it through the airport. Like, It was a year of blood, sweat, and tears. And, right around a year later, we got the tapping solution film out in the world.
That is such an amazing story, and I'm sure people listening to this are feeling it, feeling some goosebumps deep within, because it seems like 2003 was the moment where the seed was sort of placed. You came across tapping, and it took about 4 years for the incubation,
Yeah.
where you were in the middle of the desert. And what comes to my mind is the story of Jesus in the desert, right? Where he's fasting, not eating anything, and he's getting temptations from all around, but also getting these downloads from the universe, from the Tao. And it seems like you had that download as well, and you got excited because of the prospects of being able to create a documentary on this beautiful topic and this practice that you've been doing for these many years. So my question is, what within you made you feel, gave you that confidence that this is going to work? What was that mindset that you had that made you and bring your family members together? Nick Polizzi with all the cameras, $40,000 is not a small amount.
Yeah.
So obviously there was a level of risk over there. But what made you sort of go beyond and say this is going to work?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I've always been a risk taker naturally. I think I'm not afraid of failure, and that's a big deal. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. It comes fairly naturally to me. That doesn't mean if it doesn't come naturally to you, you can't change that. You can't change that pattern, that belief, and have that conscious awareness of like, okay, I'm not doing this because I'm scared of failing. So what can I do? Tapping is a tool to release whatever past traumas. I have supreme confidence in being able to figure things out. To, as my friend Morrreee Forleo says, you mentioned her podcast earlier. She wrote a book called, Everything is Figure Outable. All right, like that we can figure it out. And I think I've had that from the beginning. To me, especially in this day and age, maybe 40 years ago, you say, all right, I want to film a movie, but man, the costs are even higher, and I don't know anybody, and there's no internet to order equipment, and I got to go to a store, and how do I reach people? There were a lot more barriers to entry to create something in the world. Those really don't exist anymore, right? If you have a problem or a question or something that you don't know, Google can answer it for you. I'm sorry, I forgot to unplug my phone. I'm going to unplug it right now.
Oh, no worries at all.
I still have a good old landline that I like to talk through. So, and I forget to unplug it. So Google has the answers. Reddit has the answers. Whatever all the other places where you could post for someone saying, this is a place that I'm stuck. What would you do here? Or seeing someone else's journey of that experience. So I think I had the lack of the fear of failure. So the confidence that I could figure things out. And then the other thing that I had that I continue to have, and it serves me every day, is that I just put one foot in front of the other and just see what's the next step. Like, what am I going to do next? I've never been a 5 or 10-year planner. I can see a place where it could serve to have a business plan that says, okay, let me look to 5 or 10 years down the road. I'm not saying that's a bad idea to do something like that. That's just never been me. And I think that served me, because what I see some people doing is they have a big goal or a dream. They want to write a book. They want to make a movie. And they look at the totality of everything that's going to need to happen for it, the totality of the project. And it's so overwhelming that they are just frozen in place and they don't get anything done because it seems so big. To give you an example, I remember one of my first speaking engagements. This was 2010. So I put the movie out. We could talk about the movie. I wasn't the expert in the movie. I didn't position myself as the guy who knows tapping. I was the producer of the film. I'm in it in little bits and pieces. 2010, Carol Look invites me to speak, a tapping practitioner, a wonderful one, at one of her events. And I talked about the process of making the movie. It was one of the things, like, I can speak to you specifically about what I did and the different steps I took, some logistics, some vision and dream. And then I took questions. And it was funny because I even said, you just got to take the next step, right? You just got to take the next step. So I thought I communicated it, but clearly someone didn't hear it too clearly, or I didn't communicate it clearly enough. Because one of the first questions I get, this nice lady comes up into the microphone and she says, I see you have a DVD there. Like you've got this physical thing that you produced. I know it's old school now, 10 years later, not many DVDs and CDs left, but she says, I want to make a CD of meditations or something like that. And I said, she's like, and she goes, how do you produce it? Like who makes the DVD? Who makes the CD? Who's the company that does it? And I said, oh, there's a couple options. I can point you in the right direction for that and the different steps. And I said, so you have all the audios ready to go? Like you're looking to create the CD? And she said, oh, no, they're not recorded yet. Oh, okay. You haven't recorded them yet. Okay. So you've written them and now you're getting ready to record them? No, I haven't written them yet. I just have the idea. So, and it was like, it's amazing that you have the idea, right? There's the inspiration. But she has the idea and then she's asking me about producing the CDs.
Right.
Jumping way too far ahead. Mentally, psychologically, product planning wise, like it's okay to think ahead. But then what happens is I could see how she was getting frozen by the idea of making the actual CD. Oh, I don't know what company does this. I don't know how it works. Instead, go write the meditations, go record the meditations, like go do the thing. The next step will present itself. The next step you can figure out, but stay in that moment of like, what is the next step? Because otherwise you think too big, it's too overwhelming, and then you just get completely stuck.
Got it. So this is a lot of wisdom over here, and it's electrifying right now. Action Tribe, I don't know if this is a message that you've been waiting for, but everything is figure outable. Everything is literally figure outable. And the quote that came to my mind as you were sharing this beautiful story of that lady who came to ask you a question is, it's better to be prepared and not have an opportunity than to have that opportunity and not be prepared. And so it seemed like you were prepared when you had that opportunity to speak in public for the first time because you knew exactly the process that you went through and you were able to facilitate the same kind of results in others, but they had to be prepared too. So great story. For somebody who is waiting patiently to know about tapping, what exactly is it?
Yeah, for sure. And people are like, this whole thing's about tap dancing, or like, is he on stage somewhere? What are we talking about exactly? So
Right.
tapping or EFT, we call it tapping because we are physically tapping on these endpoints of meridians of our body. And what the latest research shows is that when we tap on these endpoints of meridians while focusing on the stress, the anxiety, the feelings of overwhelm, we send a calming signal to the amygdala in the brain. And a lot of your wise listeners will know that the amygdala is that fight, flight, or freeze response center. When we're stressed, that amygdala is firing. When we're worried about something, that amygdala is firing. It's the part of us that's old and ancient. It's important in trying to keep us safe. So when that amygdala fires because it senses danger, the blood flows away from our forebrain where we do all our great thinking into our arms and legs. So we are literally being chased, not literally, figuratively, being chased by a tiger, but it's like it's literally, it's like it's happening. Being chased by a tiger, we sense we're in danger. The effects of that, we don't think as clearly. When you're stressed out, you don't think as clearly. End of story. End of story. And when I ask people, hey, when do you have your best ideas? When are you really creative? They'll say things like taking a walk in the woods. I was taking a shower. I was on a 7-day fast in the desert. I was taking a bath. My body was relaxed. I felt safe in my body. I had the ability to think of creative ideas, solutions, approaches to life. So what tapping is doing is it's bringing that brain back online. We used to get chased by tigers and lions. Now we get chased by emails and texts and, social media. So when you're on Facebook and you're reading a post from one of your friends and you disagree completely with what they're saying, your amygdala is firing. Your body is treating it as if you are being attacked. I mean, if it's a political view and someone disagrees with you, we are taking this as an attack, as if a Democratic or Republican tiger is chasing us, whatever party you believe in, or a mask or no mask, or a pandemic is chasing us. We have all this incoming stuff that is chasing us and we're all running away from it. So what the tapping is helping to do is to bring that brain back online.
Okay. Perfect. So, love of the process that you explained, which is your body can either use your resources, which is the blood, towards running away
Yeah.
or towards thinking logically and even healing.
And even
But
healing,
you,
absolutely.
but you got to decide. You got to be cognizant of that. Now, let's imagine somebody is on Facebook and their friend, who they've been friends for 20 years, posted something that is really political and against my
Mm.
view or their view, and they're like, I gotta say something, I gotta get my voice out.
Yeah.
How does tapping help in that case? Maybe if you could explain that.
Yeah,
If they know about tapping, then they
totally.
start tapping, what's happening over there?
Yeah, no, 100%. So in that moment, the fight or flight response is firing. You feel angry, you feel attacked, you're taking it personally.
Right.
The response when someone attacks us, the innate natural response is
Mm.
to attack back, is to
Yeah.
fight back, is to flee back, is to freeze. What we want to do is try to turn off those biological responses so then we can move into our heart, into a place of peace. So if you have the wherewithal and you see the post,
Mm.
and this happens for an email, this happens
Yeah.
for any sort of conversation where it's like, you take 5 minutes and you go through the points, and we're going to do a demonstration of it later, but just as an example, it would be, even though I'm so angry about what they wrote, I
Mm.
choose to relax now. Even though I cannot believe that Johnny, who's been my friend for 30 years, is such an idiot. Like, I
Mm.
can't believe he believes this. We're actually giving a voice, and it's a safe place to give a voice to things. It's one of the things that I love about the process, that we can be angry and just get it out in that moment. Sometimes we
Mm.
need to just get it out. We need to say, he is such an idiot. I'm so angry. And we want to just vocalize all these things that we're feeling inside. And then we tap through the points, all this anger. I can't believe it. I need to respond. I need to fight back. I can't believe what they're saying. Even
Mm.
just 120 seconds of tapping, 60 seconds of tapping, you start calming the body. And now you're at a place where you can make better decisions. And that's the key about
Perfect.
tapping. That I'm not saying to you, oh, don't respond. I'm
Yep.
not saying, oh, accept everything that anyone ever says to you. Oh, never be angry. Oh, never have any emotions. I'm saying bring some clarity into your life by bringing your brain back online. Now
Mm.
you look at that post and you have some choices. You say, you know, I do feel like I need to say something to Johnny. But I'm going to write it with kindness. First off, I'm going to have
Yeah.
some awareness and say, Johnny, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. Whoa, totally different place right there.
Yeah.
I'm about to disagree with you completely, but I appreciate where you're coming from. I hear you. I
Mm.
hear what you feel. I appreciate where you're coming from. We've been friends for a long time, and I know that deep down, our friendship is more important than anything. But this is why I disagree. I believe that this idea of blah, blah, blah is, first off, now we're taking some identity politics out of it. We're talking about ideas. It's part of the challenge right now in politics that, at least in America, it's left or right.
Yeah.
It's never made any sense to me how, if you're on one party or the other, you have to agree with the 184 positions,
Exactly.
full stop. Like, there's no logic to that, right? It
No.
doesn't make any sense whatsoever, you know?
Mm.
It,
Yeah.
um, so now we can start to, instead of talking about politics or this, we can start talking about ideas or concepts. Oh, okay. So you're talking specifically about this concept. Here's how I feel about it. So that's one choice. The other choice is to go, you know what? I got to get off Facebook. I got to
Mm.
stop looking at these things. I got to go pick up a book. I got to go watch a podcast. I got to go listen to a podcast. I got to go get inspired. I need to exercise. I need to call the people I love. I need to do something positive with my life. It's not my job to fix Johnny's political views. So I'm going to make different choices now. So wherever we are in the world, whatever we're dealing with, tapping just helps give us that clarity.
Mm.
It's the same thing as meditation. It's the same thing as breath work. These are all practices to balance our body and bring that clarity back.
In your process, I know we're going to do a demonstration later on, but in your process that you did, I noticed that a lot of people jump to wanting to feel positive
Mm,
and changing a situation. But in your process with tapping, you're saying, even though I'm feeling
yeah.
XYZ, you're acknowledging what you're feeling, and then you're doing the tapping? What's the significance behind it? You're not ignoring the current situation. You're actually acknowledging the emotions or the thoughts or the difficulty that the person might be going through.
Absolutely. I think it's such a big part of the process. Just to be clear, this isn't my process.
Okay.
Tapping was developed in 1980 by Roger Callahan, shifted to its current EFT form by Gary Craig. So it's over 40 years now of these incredible people all around the world. I'm a voice for it. I'm a translator of it, just like every other expert is, and our different approaches. But I'm just really part of, a community who brings this out in the world. So it's such an important question. It's a place where people get stuck a lot. And, a lot of people reject, or not a lot of people, some people reject tapping right off the bat because of that component, right?
Okay.
They go, I watched The Secret. I'm trying to be positive, and you're saying these negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So I sat down, I don't even know how long ago, 8 years ago now, something like that, 7 years ago, with Louise Hay. Okay. And this video is available online, our interview we do together. If you type in Louise Hay, Nick Ortner, you'll see us sitting down. One of the greatest experiences of my life. I had been a fan of Louise and her work in Hay House for decades, and Hay House published my first book, so I got an opportunity to be with her, meet her, and then interview her for one of our Tapping World Summits. And I had done some tapping with her. We've done some Skype tapping together. And I said, Louise, you are known as the queen of affirmations. Like, you say positive things to yourself in the mirror. You do this mirror work. I love you. I accept you. All these things. What are you doing this negative statements? Like, I don't get it. All right. And she said something that I think about almost every day. And this just speaks to her clarity, her wisdom. She looked at me and she said, honey, if you want to clean a house, you have to see the dirt. I was like, boom. There's nothing else that needs to be said. Right? You want to, and I didn't even prep her with this question, just to be clear. So it wasn't like she came up with a good answer because I told her. We were just sat down spitballing. If you want to clean a house, you have to see the dirt. That's what we're doing with tapping. We're taking a moment to acknowledge, I'm anxious, I'm angry, I'm overwhelmed. This is how I feel. And what we're doing, and I really sense it almost like physically, and other people do too, is that we are giving a voice to these feelings, right? So we're like, I'm so angry. I'm so anxious. I can't believe they said that. We're giving a voice. Then we're saying, and with those feelings, I love and accept myself. And with those feelings, I choose to let them go. So we're beginning to move towards the positive. And then as we vocalize them, as we tap through them, eventually, when we get that sort of negative energy down enough, we start saying the positive. The opposite is going, okay, AJ just said something that really made me so angry, but I am working on forgiveness and positive thinking and all those things. So I'm going to swallow it down, right? So those are the two choices with that emotion. We either swallow it down, we repress it, we say, I'm trying to be positive. Okay, I saw The Secret, and I love The Secret, by the way, and my friends are in it, and it's just an amazing movie. Trying to be positive, swallow it down, and then we know what happens. And we've met those people. We've met the people who are like, okay, I know they're trying to be really happy, but oh my gosh, bubbling underneath them is all this anger. All right. So we're giving a voice to it and then moving towards the positive. And we can feel the difference in our body. So if I'm angry about something, or someone offends you, something happens to you, and you come to me and say, we're friends, and you say, hey, Nick, like, Johnny, it's still Johnny again on Facebook, who's making you angry. So, Johnny said this to me, and I'm just so angry. And I say to you, you really need to learn to forgive. And you go, okay, I understand that, but like, look what he said. Like, I'm angry. Like, my body right now is trying to protect itself. It feels unsafe. Step one is not instant forgiveness. Like, when you're angry about something, step one's not instant forgiveness. Step one is, let me acknowledge how I feel. Let me express it to myself, to a friend, through a process like tapping. Let me process this emotion in my body. Let me give a voice to it. And what's beautiful about tapping is that you can do this on your own without, as we said earlier with the Facebook post, without going back at Johnny and going, we're going to escalate this from, one after the other, anger, 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 anger. We're saying, let me process this emotion. Why am I triggered this way? Why do I feel this way? This is the truth of how I feel. Let me release it from my body, this physical body that like holds on to these emotions, that is trying to keep us safe. Then we gain that clarity. Then we open the door to forgiveness. Then we open the door to letting it go. So I know it's a long answer as to why we start with the negative, but I think it's so important to understand why that's such a big part of the process.
That is very well put, very profound, because I get these questions a lot of time from people in our community and listeners as well. You see these posts, right, on Instagram, forgive, let go. And while it's easy to get inspired when it comes to our own selves, sometimes because the other person has hurt us so much or betrayed us or didn't act in accordance with our agreement, we feel deeply betrayed and it's hard to forgive. It's very hard to forgive. And like you've said, forgiveness is not the first step. The first step is to process what happened and the experience that you had to go through. And you can do that through tapping. Now, in your research, you also discovered that our bodies are electrical. So maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So our current societal paradigm is really focused on the biological
Okay.
component of
Yeah.
our bodies, right? So something's wrong with you. What do? You either take a pill or a supplement, or, it's just like in your mouth and this biological process digesting in our stomach. Like that's what we tend to understand
Yeah.
most.
Yeah.
But the reality is that our bodies are electrical. Now, most people know when you point out to them that our brains are so electrical, right? It's just like
Yeah.
firing neurons firing all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
an electrical storm happening
Correct.
in our brains now. And that happens with the rest of our body. We have these meridians in our body. So when we do this tapping, we're tapping on these endpoints of meridians of our body. We're actually sending an electrical signal with that percussive tapping, right? So that like
Okay.
percussive tapping on the body through these specialized points is sending that electrical signal. And that's what sort of helps to calm that amygdala, disrupt whatever's going on, the anxiety, the anger, the overwhelm, whatever our brain is focused on, and also with our bodies. There's a lot of people have physical responses to tapping where some people yawn a lot. So the body is relaxing and they're just like opening up to that oxygen. Some people burp a lot. So it's just like, oh, there's some digestive stuff going on. There's like things moving. So we're accessing this other part of the body. I think we'll see a lot more of that in the coming years. For example, there's a lot more research on biophoto modulation, like light coming in, like, hey, sunlight, we know, creates vitamin D on our skin. So it's like we are creating, we can create vitamin D. We can take a pill that's vitamin D, and we can also create it by having sunlight touch our skin. We're going to learn more about that in the coming years. And I think it's going to become more acceptable to go, okay, it's not just about the things that I swallow. It's about the things that I think, and then these physical interventions in our body.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, it's so fascinating that we are confirming what the ancients always knew, which is the food that we eat is one thing, but also the way we interact and relate to nature, that's a whole different thing as well. And like you've alluded to, just being in the presence of sunshine can do wonders for our body, or even for that matter, grounding, right? Just going
Grounding. I was
barefoot.
about to say grounding. I've been a fan of grounding for a long time. For people that don't know what it is, it's really simple. Putting your feet on the bare earth. And it's what the research shows is that there are actually electrons that are coming up. I'm not an expert in it from the earth. And there's even grounding sheets. I've got a grounding pad and so grounding. And that's the thing. That's another, I mean, for me, even when I believe in all this stuff, when you tell me, okay, when I put my feet on the ground, I know it feels nice. So that's always good, right? To go, hey, this feels nice. Just like the sun feels nice on your skin at the right length of time. People are so scared of the sun because of skin cancer. Yes, don't burn, right? Like that's obvious. When you burn, you don't feel good. And when you're too hot, you don't feel good. The right length of time. But grounding, putting our feet in the ground, and all of a sudden there's electrons that come from the earth into our body. I don't understand how it works. It makes no sense to me. But we are getting there in that understanding.
Fascinating. I was explaining this to a friend of mine who happens to be a statistician. And I was like, you got to try grounding. But he was trying to rationalize it. wait, exactly what is happening? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah,
understand this. It doesn't make
yeah.
sense from a scientific
Sure.
perspective.
Well, I
And then
think the science, I don't understand it, but I think the science and research is there, and they're showing,
there, right? Yeah.
lessening of inflammation. And in the same way, one of the things that's happened the last couple of years with tapping, which is really exciting, is that we're getting some harder research on it, like harder meaning like more concrete stuff. So, before it was the meridians and we're tapping and this, that, and the other. I just saw a study across my desk, and it was actually a replication study where
Okay.
they, if people don't know, the replication study is going, okay, someone else did this research and it had this outcome. Let me try to duplicate that research, because it's actually a big problem in science where people can't duplicate the research.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal to go, we got this result twice in two separate studies. And what they did in the study is they had 3 groups. So one group did an hour of tapping in a group setting.
Okay.
The second group did psychoeducation for an hour. So they learned about the body and stress and the mind. And the third group read magazines for an hour, just in a waiting room. They got the boring one, or happy for them, who knows. So they did cortisol before and after. So you spit in a tube. In your saliva is cortisol. We all have different levels of cortisol throughout the day, and depending on our stress levels. That's the main stress hormone, and really easy to measure through saliva. The tapping group saw a 43% reduction in cortisol in an hour, which is a massive drop, like absolutely massive. The psychoeducation group saw a 19% decrease in cortisol. And I love those 2 groups, because what that leads me to think, what that shows me is, okay, that psychoeducation group, when they were learning about the body and stress, sort of like all of our viewers and listeners are doing now, the body relaxed. It was like, okay, I'm learning about things. I'm consciously relaxing, consciously lowering stress. So that was 19% reduction, but you add the tapping component in, and you almost double what that drop in cortisol is. Okay. And then the poor control group, the third group, reading magazines in and out for an hour. Listen to this. Their cortisol went up 2%. So an hour probably being bored. Yeah. Maybe an hour of reading things in magazines that stressed them out. They were reading the news. Like, I don't know what they were reading exactly. Yeah. I joke when I talk about the study that I'd like to see that replicated with the control group being on Facebook for an hour to be like, what does that do to their cortisol? So it shows there's a physical response in our body from all these different activities.
Interesting. Now, I always, discuss with my friends from a marketing standpoint. Reading magazines sometimes can be good, especially the trashy magazines, because then they use headlines that make you literally raise your stress or pay attention, right? Catchy headlines. But like you've suggested, they're not really good when it comes to reducing stress. And it's so fascinating. And if we mix the studies with the practices, you're able to actually reduce stress. So love these type of studies, because it helps me, also people who are really fascinated by tapping, to explain to them that it's not just the practice, but it's also science that's backing this up. So thanks so much for sharing this beautiful study, and I'm sure people can read more into it. And we'll share the link about how people can get your book as well. But could we walk through the tapping points for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go through the points. Let's have an experience together.
Okay, sure.
So, couple of steps to tapping. Step 1 is, what do you want to tap on? All right. So you're angry about the Facebook post. You feel anxious about a global pandemic. You're overwhelmed by an upcoming deadline. If it's safe to do so, go ahead, just take a moment to close your eyes and just take a gentle breath in. And let's begin to focus on what we want to release. So anxiety, anger, tune into your body. If you have any physical pain in your body, tapping is very powerful at moving, shifting, eliminating physical pain. So you can tune in on that. You can also just sense the tension in your shoulders, in your neck. Just see how your body feels, what you're holding on to. And let's focus on one thing that you want to let go of. Anxiety, anger, pain, overwhelm. And as you tune into it, give it a number on a scale of 0 to 10. So if you're anxious and just jumped in this after having a stressful meeting, your anxiety is at a 10 or 9 or an 8, just give it a number so we can gauge the shift of it. So we start by, we've got our target, we've got our number, and then we can do some tapping. I'm going to use some very general language. The language can be important, and as you work on different things, you can get really specific on, even though I'm anxious about a global pandemic, you can change it if you want, but also the general language will often serve you as well to have that experience and make that shift.
And just to add, most of our people are going to listen. So if you could
I will
describe
describe all
ours.
the points. Yes, thank
Perfect.
you, AJ. Appreciate that. So we start by tapping on the side of the hand. It's called the karate chop point. It's below the pinky on the outside of the hand, that meaty part. You're taking 4 fingers of one hand, the other hand, whatever feels comfortable for you, and you're tapping on the outside of the hand. And then repeat after me, either in your mind or out loud. Even though I feel all this anxiety, I choose to relax and feel safe now. And we're going to stay on the side of the hand for 2 more statements. You can change it if you want, or just tap along. You can also just get benefits, even if anxiety is not your issue, just by doing the tapping. So even though I'm holding on to this stress in my body, and it's so hard to relax, I choose to feel safe now. And one more time, still on the side of the hand, even though there's so much going on. And it can be really overwhelming. I love and accept myself now. Now we'll tap through the points. The first point is the eyebrow point. It's on the inside of the eyebrow where the hair ends and it meets the nose. You can take 2 fingers of one hand, the other hand, or both hands. The meridians run down both sides of the body, so whatever's comfortable, safe, and easy for you. And as you tap gently on that point, I want you to just begin to focus your attention on what you're stressed out about. What's the thing that you picked that you're just really overwhelmed about? Think that thought now. Now moving to the side of the eye. It's not at the temple, next to the eye, on the bone. Again, one side or both sides. Tapping gently. And if you can, if you're alone, you could say, I'm anxious about, and you just fill in the blank. Or I'm angry about, or I'm stressed about. Give it a voice. And if you can't give it a voice, think that in your mind. I'm so stressed about what's happening. Under the eye. Again, we're looking to actually fire that amygdala to focus on that negative thought in order to release its charge, in order to disengage it in the brain, in order to process it in the body and let it go. So do that now. Think that thought. Under the nose, right below the nose, 2 fingers above the lip, tapping gently, breathing gently. Feeling present, strong, and safe in your body. Thinking these thoughts, feeling that stress, beginning to let it go. Under the mouth, it's above the chin, below the lip, and that little crease there. Again, with 2 fingers. What have you been so worried about? Where have you been holding this tension in your body? How fast have you been going? Sense all that now. Notice how your body begins to relax as you acknowledge just how fast you've been going, everything you've had coming at you, all the responsibilities, the pressure, the stress. Moving to the next point for the collarbone point, just feel for the 2 little bones of the collarbone. You can go right below it, tap with all 10 fingers of both hands. Acknowledging just how much pressure there's been on you to perform, to get things done. How much uncertainty, how much lack of control with this pandemic. Sensing these feelings of overwhelm, the stress that your body is carrying, and beginning to let it go. Underneath the arm, 3 inches underneath the armpit, either side of the body. right on the brow line for women. You're tapping with the 4 fingers of either hand. Just one side is usually easiest. Tuning in to these thoughts, feelings, these places where you've been stuck. Last point, right at the top of the head, on the crown. Tapping gently, breathing gently. Now we'll do one more round back to the eyebrow and repeat after me, either in your mind or out loud. It's safe to release the stress.
It's safe to release the stress.
Side of the eye. It's safe to let go.
It's safe to let go.
Under the eye. It's safe to relax.
It's safe to relax.
Under the nose, releasing all the stress from my body.
Releasing all the stress from my body.
Under the mouth, letting go.
Letting go.
Collarbone, from every cell of my body.
From every cell of my body.
Under the arm, right now.
Right now.
Top of the head, right now.
Right now. Right now.
And you can gently stop tapping and take a breath in and let it go. So now we tune back in. So we check in on that anxiety, anger, stress, and we see, okay, we were at a 10 before, and now it's a 7 or a 6 or a 5. And then we also notice what came up. So if you went from a 10 to a 7, fabulous. You started to shift that anxiety in 2 super fast rounds of tapping. And then we continue to do that process, letting go to a place where we go, sometimes we get to a 5 and we go, okay, that's good. I got things to do. I was at a 10. Now I'm at a 5. I'm still a little anxious, but I feel a heck of a lot better and I need to get on with my day. Or we continue to do that process. And then we continue to explore. Oftentimes what happens is we start thinking about one thing. We think that's the issue. And then we remember something else. We remember something from our childhood. We remember something that someone said. We realize we're holding on in other places. And it really unlocks that subconscious mind to bring forward the things that need to be healed.
Very, very true. It's like when you take out or you process a certain emotion, there's like a vortex created, and then other things that need healing come manifest in that space. But I could feel it. I could feel just within these 2 minutes that we did the tapping, I could feel a release. I could feel much more better. And for those who are listening, if you are at a 10, even if you went from a 10 to an 8, it's still a significant shift. So it's a process, right?
It's a process. And that's, the rating scale is great because it lets you see the progress. Within our tapping solution app, one of the coolest things about it is that we have a rating scale for every meditation. And we just crossed 3 million completed sessions on the app. So 3 million times someone opened it up and they said they were at a 10 and then they went to a 5. So we actually have data points on 3 million sessions showing the decrease in anxiety and stress and pain in the body. Like we've got data points on all sorts of stuff showing this works.
That's amazing. And in a short while, we're going to give an opportunity to our listeners to actually check out your beautiful app so that they can not only maybe go check out your book, but also complement that experience with the app that you and your family have designed for our listeners and people around the world. Now, a while back, you did an interview where you spoke about the money story. So firstly, if you can tell us what is a money story and how did you change yours?
Yeah. Well, the money story is, the things that we learned from our parents oftentimes, or, or elders, our childhood experiences around money. Those formative years, if at the dinner table there was an argument about there not being enough money every night, that's part of your money story. If you saw your parents, making a lot of money and then losing it all, that's part of your money story. So it's really the financial traumas. And we often don't think about trauma from, the money and the financial perspective. We think about abuse and those kinds of situations, which obviously are very important and need to be healed and addressed. But it can also happen with our weight, our body story. We have all these stories from our past experiences. One of my money story elements, because we have all these different components of it, it was this boom or bust cycle. So I saw my father go through it many times, and somehow I started copying it, all right, where I would reach a certain level of success, And then next thing I knew, okay, it's great. I feel like I'm top of the world. And a year later, I've got $100,000 in credit card debt, and the business is falling apart. There's a lot of elements for what was happening there. I think part of it, some of the things that I personally tapped on to clear out that money story. I was successful in some entrepreneurial stuff when I was really young, not like uber successful, but making, $100,000 a year, $120,000 a year when I'm 23 or 24, when my friends were making 30 out of college, right? So like a dramatic difference in levels of success, which was fun and exciting, and I could do things and I could pay for dinners and this, that, and the other. And then I could see the gap widening between me and my friends. I could see where the money was getting in the way of our relationships or how we relate to each other and our friendships, because I didn't feel fully confident and fully at ease with that level of finances. So sure enough, subconsciously, I sabotaged myself, and a year later, I'm in massive debt.
Okay.
Most of us can find those kinds of patterns in our lives. You'll have people who say, I make a lot of money, but I spend it all, right? That like or I carry a lot of debt around and I can't seem to, overcome this level of debt. Obviously, there's a practical side of it. There's a decision-making side of it. There's not buying things and spending less and those things, but they're all controlled by our psychology. They're all controlled by our money story. So when we clear out those financial traumas, we get that clarity back. It's what I said, earlier about clarity. When we're angry about a Facebook post, we have no clarity. When we have these financial traumas, when we have this old story, we're just running on autopilot. We don't have clarity. And what we're doing with the tapping is we clear out those traumas, is we're bringing that brain back online so we can make better decisions.
Got it. So I think this is a very important topic, and I'm sure all of our listeners have their own money story. And if we don't recognize the stories that are playing in our lives, they're like a broken tape record playing in the background, and it keeps repeating itself again and again. So I appreciate you for bringing this into light so that we each can identify our own stories and find our ways that we can tap through it or process it.
Absolutely. Tapping or breathing. We were talking earlier about that. You're doing a lot of breath work. The tapping and breath work combination is really fabulous. We have a meditation in our app just called Tap and Breathe. So it's like super simple, not thinking about anything specific, just bringing that electrical release with the tapping and then the power of breath work.
Wonderful. Now, you spoke about your app, which is a beautiful complement to your books and your work and your in-person workshops. What made you want to launch an app, and how's the response been so far?
Well, this response has been fabulous. I mean, bigger than anything that we've ever done. The books were very successful. 2 of our books were New York Times bestseller. My first book, The Tapping Solution, and then a year later, my sister wrote The Tapping Solution for Weight Loss and Body Confidence. That was also a New York Times bestseller. So really fabulous. But what was difficult about the books is people would read it, they would get excited. We have tapping scripts in there so they could have an experience. But I heard time and again that the consistency wasn't there, where it's like, I know this helps me and I feel better, but I'm not doing it as often as I'd like. And then people also struggled with the language part of it. What do I say? How do I say it? And especially when we're in the moment, if we're angry, if we're anxious, if we're afraid, if we're grieving, if we're in that moment where our brain isn't online, right? Where it's like, like we talked about earlier, we're not thinking clearly. So it can be challenging in that moment to go, okay, I'm so angry. Let me figure out this wording and language for this stuff. It can be done. I did it for a long time. A lot of people did it for a long time. The app really solves that problem to the point where I listen to my own voice on the app and I find it really helpful. And I'm not someone, I will never watch this again, not because I haven't really enjoyed it, but because I don't need to see myself again, right? I had the experience. I was there. I don't need it. The app is so helpful for those specific moments that I'm using it personally. I'm tapping more than ever before because it's like, okay, I'm unfocused this morning. Let me use the motivate me to have a productive day to just 8 minutes, clear out my mind and get going. Right now we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 meditations in there. So many topics. We're adding more all the time, but getting focused for work, trouble sleeping. We have stuff for kids in there. for women's health, pregnancy, menopause, hot flashes, like the gamut of things, emotions, sadness, grief, anger, overwhelm, burnout. Like we looked around and said, how do we provide as many solutions as possible? We just talk about the money story. I just released a Go Deeper series, and the first day is on financial abundance. So that 20-minute session specifically takes you through how to figure out your money story, how to figure out those traumas from the past and let them go. So I think it's the best thing we have done so far. It's where we're putting all our time and attention because it's the most practical way to help people where they are in that moment.
Very true, and I completely agree. The book helps with acquainting yourself with these new practices, and you do have the scripts, but with the app, it's just so much simpler. You just press a button, and the voice helps also because you're being guided to the experience.
The voice, and we have music that is really nice and relaxing, and you can change your avatar in the background. There's all these little features that just make it, a better experience for people.
Awesome. Now I saw a photo of you with Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. So I'm curious, how did you end up meeting him? What's the story like?
Yeah. So Wayne, Wayne was an inspiration for my whole life. If I look at, in my 20s, the people that I listened to on my, first it was tapes, and then it was the big fat iPod, like the 3-inch thick one. It was, Tony Robbins, who I mentioned earlier, Louise Hay, who I mentioned earlier, and Wayne Dyer and his amazing books and speeches. His books are fabulous. His public talks, I think, are where he shines the most. And just holding a stage presence and telling his amazing stories. So he was published by Hay House, and when I was published by them, started going to these events where I was a featured speaker. Well, he was the featured speaker. I was, low down on the billing, but I often spoke after him on Saturday mornings. So we got to know each other before going on stage and afterwards and at different dinners. And then really where I got to spend a lot of time with Wayne is went to Australia together for a 2-week tour and had many dinners there. He was actually in a lot of pain with his neck during that time. So we did a lot of tapping together. I was slated to speak after him in Melbourne, Australia, and his neck hurt so much that he had to come off stage. Never in his history of speaking had he ever come off stage. So I did a little tapping with him in the back, and then I came on because he had an hour slot, and I did group tapping for Wayne. 3,000, 5,000 people in the audience who were all quite emotional. They came to see Wayne, and then he had to leave, and so we did this tapping together, and he spoke about how that made his neck feel better. That's a whole other thing, just like the quantum world of someone, supporting and helping other people. So we got to spend a lot of time then and became good friends. And sadly, tragically, Louise has passed away as well. She passed away at a good old age, into her 90s. Wayne, I think, was really too young and he left us too early. But what can you do? I sense his presence all the time. He still influences my work. He's certainly not gone when I can pull him up on my iPhone and listen to one of his lectures and feel his energy. So really one of my life's great honors to spend some time with him and be with him.
Got it. Yeah, just as you said, he had a very marvelous stage presence, right? He had a way of captivating the crowd and making them wanting to listen to his stories, anecdotes, and ways of thinking. Not recently, I think about 4 years back, when I was on the campus of UBC, when I was doing my MBA, went to one of the libraries and I went to the section where they had the old books. Actually, they were giving away books because it was not to rent. And I came across a Wayne Dyer set, but it was a cassette set. It was not like a book or anything like that. And I knew I don't have a cassette player. I probably won't ever, but I just got it just for the remembrance. And it was one of his older versions where he had a mustache.
Yes. I love it. That's fabulous. That feels like just an item to keep, even if
just an item.
Totally.
Exactly.
No, that's fabulous. You might have to find a cassette player and
I
listen,
should actually. Yeah, because
there'd be an energy there. There'd be a different energy of that experience for sure.
For sure. Hopefully, I'll try to find one nearby. And thanks a lot for sharing that story. Really, really amazing story. Your most recent book is called Manifesting Your Greatest Self.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on manifestation? Because over the years, especially with the law of
Sure.
attraction, it's got a slightly bad rep.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on it, and how can somebody use tapping to really speeden up the process of shifting their reality, so to speak?
Yeah. No, it's tricky, and so I don't know if that word was the best one to use because of that, but I tried to combine it with your greatest self, right? That
Okay.
like this isn't about manifesting a car or a house or
Okay.
all these things. It's not just
Okay.
about thinking that something's going to appear, though. Look, I've seen some amazing things happen when you do that, and
Yeah.
there's certainly an element of that is, whatever the science is behind it, there's something there. But what I care about is the point of the book is how do you, and by manifest is, how do you create your
Mm.
greatest self? How do you live your best life? How do you clear out all the gunk from the past to show up in the world the way you want to? Because that's the name of the game, right? The name of the game is not to have the most cars or the houses or this, that, and the other. It's to be the best version of yourself. And within that best version, and there's a lot of forgiveness. There's a lot of acceptance of imperfection.
Mm.
So that's the other side. The book really goes, and that's why I did a 21-day process. Like manifesting your greatest self doesn't mean manifesting your perfect self. It doesn't mean manifesting, perfection every day and you were unproductive and that wasn't your greatest self. It's
Mm.
you were unproductive and you forgave yourself for being unproductive. You reacted in a way you didn't want to and you forgave yourself for reacting that way. And then you just kept course correcting. Life is an endless series of course corrections of going,
Yeah.
I made that choice and maybe I want to make a different one next time, or maybe I want to make a different one in the next 5 minutes. But even with that awareness, I'm not going to beat myself up for making that choice. The most basic phrase in EFT is, even though blank, I love, accept, and forgive myself. And now some people struggle with that, so I don't always lead with it. But underpinning all of this is the idea that whatever happens in my life, can I love, accept, and forgive myself within that context? That's the name of the game. That's the name of life. That's the name of every 5-minute experience we have. Whatever I did, whatever choice I made, whatever I experienced, can I love and accept myself through that process?
I love that you brought this into the topic. One of the biggest issues that people have is this sense of regret in
Mm,
their lives because of certain quote unquote wrong decisions that they might have taken in their youth, with their education, with their jobs, with their spouses, or with
mm,
any decision.
yeah,
And like you've alluded to, it's not about feeling that sense of regret, but forgiving your own self because life is a journey
yeah.
and there's something that you can do today for yourself. So,
It's a regret, shame, guilt. Um, those are, if you've ever read any of David Hawking's work, Letting Go, Healing and Recovery, Power versus Force, he talks about the different energies between emotions. So at the bottom of the scale, in terms of energetic power, is shame, guilt,
ah,
regret. The top of the scale is unconditional love. And, we progress through those. So if you want to feel unconditional love, if you want to feel peace in your body, if you want to feel joy in your body, the first step is to go, okay, where do I feel shame? And to look at those places where those deep, hidden, dark corners. And as Louise said so beautifully, we start by finding the dirt. And it doesn't mean we get stuck there
mm,
forever. It also doesn't mean, look, we're going to clean. I'm here in this barn, which I built in my backyard, which is my home office. And I'm going to clean a corner. And guess what? It's going to get dirty again.
yeah.
Right. So it doesn't mean, okay, look at guilt, shame, and regret. And you don't get to experience unconditional love until you clear out everything that you've ever done in the past and every guilty thought and every guilty feeling. We're cleaning the house, we're letting go, and then we are feeling those positive emotions. And then we're going to go back to having some dirt that we have to clean up. But this
Right.
process of cleaning up the dirt, of decluttering, you just tend to keep things cleaner, right? You
Yeah.
tend to move up in that place where now you can wake up in the morning and feel those more positive emotions naturally.
So there you go, Action Tribe. Life is a cycle. Your home, your house, your body will get dirty eventually. So it's not about doing something and forever being pristine, but it's about recognizing that all of us are imperfect and we need to detox and clean sometimes to get to those emotions that will really make us feel like $1 million or $10 million or even more than that. Uh, so Nick, before closing, you've also written a book for children called My Magic Breath, right? How was the experience like writing a book for children, and also what made you
Yeah.
write a book?
Um, so I'd written a couple other books. When my daughter June was born, she's 5 years old now. The just children's books came into my life. My brother Alex had written our kids' book on tapping. So we have a kids' book
Okay,
on tapping called Gorilla Thumps and Bear Hugs, which teaches all the different tapping points with animals. And if you want to teach your kids tapping, that's a great resource. And
nice.
we've got tapping meditations for kids in the app. My magic breath was just this idea I had to teach kids a simple breathing technique. So, basic breath work, inhaling the good, exhaling the bad, blowing it off the page, making it interactive in that way. So it's just a little idea. And with my sister-in-law, Allison, who was a second grade teacher, and actually Michelle Palizzi, who's Nick Palizzi's wife, who we talked about earlier. She's an incredible illustrator. She illustrated the book. So it was just a couple of us getting together with this fun adventure. I really enjoy the process. It is really hard to write children's
Yeah,
books.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I think I probably felt the same way. I think most people think, oh, I have an idea for a children's book. It's just easy. Like, oh, how about this little story? It's hard to write a great children's book.
Right.
Um, there's every page matters, every word matters. So you'd think, well, it's only 200 words. How hard can that be? But I personally think, I mean, it's more work, obviously, to write, a full 75,000 word book and everything. That's more actual hours. But the decisions being made in a kid's book, it's tricky to get right. So the
Yeah.
great kids books out there that my daughter loves and go back to all the time, I have just so much respect for the skill and the creativity that went into making a great book.
Wonderful. I do want to write a kid's book sometime in the future. And it was one time that I got an opportunity to conduct like an entrepreneurial marketing workshop for, I think they were third and fourth graders. I thought
Yeah.
it was going to be easy,
Yeah.
but it was so hard because they've got like the attention span is so limited and they're looking here and there, and they're so smart these days
Yeah.
because of the access to social media and technology. But yeah, it
But
was
that's an
not easy at
incredible
all.
challenge. Like, how do you translate,
Yeah.
to that? And how do you get your wins in? Well, when you go to write your kid's book, make sure to reach out so I can give you any tips or pointers that I can share.
100%. And also, thanks a lot for sharing all that you have shared so far, the stories, the anecdotes, and for being so vulnerable in sharing your own challenges that you went through. Action Tribe, I hope you enjoyed today's session so far. We are learning that our body is very, very, very intelligent. And just because we can't see the meridians, the energy channels, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. Modern science is catching up to what the ancients intuitively knew, which is that we have an intricate network of energy channels that facilitate health. And if they are blocked for some reason, then the energy gets stuck and that stagnates, which leads to illness and further worse things. But by tapping on those energy points using the power of our intention and chanting positive affirmations, we can restore health, balance, and joy once again. We can change our life, but sometimes, like we're learning today in today's interview, we just need to step out of the way and let our inner healer do its job. Because just as Carolyn Mice once put, the soul always knows what to do to heal itself. The challenge is to silence the mind. And with that being said, we've come to the last round for today, which is called the wisdom round. So, Nick, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received in your life?
Great question. So, when we first put out the movie, became friendly with Cheryl Richardson, who's an amazing author and speaker, New York Times bestselling author, and um, there were a lot of directions to go. She was in the movie. There was a lot coming at us. There was different controversies in the EFT world about who was doing what and how it was being done. And she just always steadied me back to just like focus on your mission. Like, what are you looking to do? Whatever your mission and your perspective is, whatever your approach is, stick with that. So it was just so grounding, even more so now with the social media world and all the noise that's coming at us. It's like, just stay focused. What is it you're trying to do? If you come to that from a good place. If your heart's in the right place and you stay focused on that, amazing things will happen, and they certainly have.
And if you could spend 1 hour with someone who is living or dead, who would it be?
Oh boy. I feel like living is just like cheating because it's possible. So like we
Mm,
should go dead and we should go big.
mm, yeah.
And I'm not an extremely religious person, though I'm a very spiritual person. And I think I'd have to go with Jesus. I mean, love, accept, and forgive myself as part of the tapping process is so fundamental. And I think that's fundamental to his teachings. So I have to go with one of the great masters or the Buddha. It's also nice to just meditate and just find some bliss.
And what is that one thing you do in the morning or maybe in the evening before going to sleep that really has improved the quality of your life?
Well, so tapping is the cheating answer,
Mm,
because so I'm going to skip tapping. I'm going to give a practical. I've already talked about tapping. I'm going to give
mm.
practical advice, and I'm going to say, before bed, wearing blue light blocking glasses. So I got these orange glasses. They're available everywhere now. You can go to Amazon and type in blue light blocking glasses. We're looking at our phones. We have all this light coming at us that isn't natural. And when I started wearing those, it instantly starts to relax you early in the night when you should be relaxing and helps you get great sleep. So
Great. And if you could recommend one book for all of our listeners today, what would that book be?
there are so many. I saw that question. I was like, so I'm going to recommend a book that I'm rereading right now. And that's always good when I'm rereading something. And the book is called Essentialism. I think the author's name, I have it on my Kindle. Yeah, if you
Greg
type in
McKeown?
Essentialism. Yeah. Yeah. Essentialism, it's as the title implies, like how to focus on the things that are important, how to go in one direction. And I certainly within my business, I struggle with that because there's a million different directions to go on, a million different things pulling at my time and opportunities. So it's like, how do we get really focused on the things that are going to move the needle? So
Got it. So, Action Tribe, would you like to receive this book for free? Because audible.com is offering all of our listeners one free book download along with a 30-day trial. So, you can actually start listening to Essentialism right now for free. And in fact, in most of the cases, the authors themselves read out the book to you. So, go to my7chakras.com/free book, my7chakras.com/free book to start listening to the book recommended by Nick, which is Essentialism. So, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today, coming on our show and gracing us with your presence. Before going, what is that one thing that you are grateful for, and how do we get to know you and work with you and get to get your books as well online?
yeah, great. So, I'm grateful for this opportunity. As I think I've, bashed social media a little bit today, as we talked about all the anger and the energy there. But the reality is that it lets us communicate in this way. So, as long as we're putting our attention in these positive mediums, whether you're watching on social media or listening on the podcast, like how incredible is it that we can have these podcasts information that is free, like on all different topics. So it's just such an exciting, if you're into self-help and personal development, it's an exciting time to be alive. um, the challenge I would say is there's too much, so go with essentialism. Like, just say I'm going to listen to every My Seven Chakras show. Like, I'm going to go deep in one place because I think that makes a difference to not be too distracted. TheTappingSolution.com is our main website. I'm on Facebook /and Ortner, on Instagram, Nick Ortner. And also, if you want to get the app, thetappingsolutionapp.com /My Seven Chakras. And go check it out from there.
There you go, Action Tribe. We'll have all the links up in the show notes, but the tapping solution app.com /my 7 chakra. Seven is a word. So we'll have all the links in the show notes. And if you've enjoyed this episode so far, then make sure that you take a screenshot on your phone, wherever you're listening to this episode on, and tag us on Instagram. My handle is at my7chakras. Nick's handle is at Nick Ortner. So tag us so that we can share your story on Instagram and connect as well. And finally, if you'd like to join our Facebook group where we're having all these discussions of breathwork, yoga, healing work, emotional cleansing, go to my7chakras.com/tribe, my7chakras.com/tribe. Nick, thank you so much for coming on our show. It is a surreal moment for me. If somebody asked me like 3 years back, would you ever interview somebody like Nick Ortner, who's written such amazing books and is a New York Times bestselling author, I would say you're kidding, right? But here we are. So I appreciate you taking your time out and connecting with me and all of our listeners and taking us one step closer to a human revolution.
Thank you, AJ. You are a fabulous interviewer. You hold such beautiful space for your guests, I can tell, and I've just really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to end the